This really happened to me in Sacramento 3 summers ago, and I wish I were making it up. I'm telling it now because the way control can hide under the word care is a trick I didn't see until it almost cost me more than my pride. The betrayal landed with the paper chart in the humming triage bay at Sutter Medical Center on L Street, under a buzzing fluorescent light that made the white laminate counter glitter like powdered sugar. My daughter-in-law had arrived gripping a blue binder with a laminated meal plan and my insurance card tucked into the pocket, insisting I was non-compliant and needed strict oversight. The ER physician skimmed my electronic chart, glanced at Kayla's binder, then back at the screen, his face drained, and he pressed a button on the wall. "Security to triage 3, he said, eyes not leaving the forged care order someone had attached to my name. That was the moment I understood the diet wasn't a diet anymore. It was a leash, and she was holding it. If you genuinely enjoy our stories, please subscribe to the channel, tell us where you're from, and what time it is right now. It's always fascinating to know how far our story flows. My name is Elaine. I'm 64, a retired school secretary from McClatchy High, and the kind of woman who knows exactly which aisle at the Raley's on Freeport stocks the good olive oil. I have one son, Mark, who works long hours as a lineman for SMUD, and a granddaughter named Poppy, who draws suns with 8 rays and confident smiles. I also have a daughter-in-law, Kayla, who calls herself a wellness consultant, and who, if this were fiction, would be rejected by an editor for being too on the nose. I met her the way small catastrophes often arrive, in a tidy package that everyone swears is a blessing. When Mark brought her to Sunday barbecue 3 summers back, the July heat turned our small Brentwood Drive backyard into a shimmering mirage. He looked proud, nervous. She was the kind of pretty that photographs clean, glossy ponytail, white sundress, sandals that clicked like punctuation on my patio. She brought a mason jar of what she called detox lemonade, sweetened with maple syrup and the certainty of youth. She complimented my hydrangeas, laughed in the right places, and pretended not to notice when my potato salad had more mayonnaise than polite people allow. I liked her because my son liked her. Then I tried to keep liking her because my son married her. Right after the wedding at the old sugar mill in Clarksburg, an aesthetic, Instagrammable affair, Kayla suggested that I tighten up. I was, at the time, what my late husband would have called sturdy. I took my blood pressure meds, I walked the levee trail, and once a week I ate huevos rancheros at Tower Cafe with my friend Beatrice, who believes cilantro is a personality trait. Kayla had a different religion, clean eating, cold plunges, and the gospel of less. She said things like, "Inflammation is a thief," and sent me links to wellness blogs with pastel fonts and affiliate codes. When Mark's house in Oak Park flooded from a burst pipe that winter, they moved in with me, just for 2 months, until the insurance company approved repairs. The 2 months stretched, and the house learned the new sound of my pantry door closing with a child-proof click. It started small. She swapped my salt for potassium salt, my butter for ghee, my coffee for mushroom powder in a tin that smelled like an old church pew. She taped a laminated chart to my refrigerator. "Elaine's plan," it said, in the neat teacher print of a woman who had never worked in a school. It listed calories and macros and a cheat window that never opened wider than a breeze. She replaced my plates with smaller ones because visual cues matter. She threw out my Hidden Seas candies. Yes, I had a stash. And no, I didn't confess it, and gave me a Fitbit, then linked it to her phone. When I protested gently at first, Mark would squeeze my shoulder and say, "She's just trying to help, Ma." Help does not use a padlock. The morning I realized how deep I'd sunk, I reached for my old yellow mixing bowl to whisk eggs. That bowl had been with me through bake sales and sorrow, sloshing batter next to Poppy's chubby hands. It lived in the second cabinet from the sink for 40 years. That morning it was gone. In its place, a white ceramic one appeared, smaller, lighter, sterilized by intent. The pantry door had a silver lock near the top, a thing you'd use on cleaning supplies if you had toddlers. It's just until you build better habits, Kayla said, keys dangling from her lanyard with her logo, a magnolia blossom in a circle. You can have anything in there that's on your plan. Ask me. The first real humiliation came at my own dining table. It was Poppy's 7th birthday, and I'd made a sheet cake with thick chocolate frosting because life's joys should have weight. The house hummed with guests in paper hats. The fan turned lazily under the ceiling. Kayla served carrot sticks in mason jars and a tray of gluten-free crackers with hummus. When I lifted a sliver of cake to my plate, truly a sliver, an apology for a slice, Kayla's voice cut the room as cleanly as a knife. "Elaine, that's not on your plan," she said, eyes on the guests as though the line was a joke we all shared. She took the plate from me, scraped the frosting back into the pan, and laid a strawberry where the cake had been. My face burned so hot I could have boiled sugar with it. The guests giggled the way people giggle when they want to be on the right side of a performance. Poppy looked up at me with her big, questioning eyes and said, loud, "Nana's in trouble? A woman can swallow 1,000 things. That strawberry almost choked me." My body complied at first. I lost 12 pounds, then 15. "You're glowing," Kayla said, photographing me in profile like I was a product. But I was dizzy too, and cold at the edges. My hands cramped in the morning like I'd slept gripping a ghost. I woke hungry and went to bed hungrier, dreams tasting like toast. Then the packages started coming, fist-sized boxes from online suppliers addressed to Capital Wellness LLC, new scales, pill organizers, tubs of protein that smelled like vanilla surrender. I noticed how Kayla began asking for my Medicare card just to update, and how she requested my driver's license and insurance information, and how she set up my doctor's portal on her iPad because technology stresses you out, Elaine. I noticed how receipts disappeared from the mail tray, while the coffee table grew a neat stack of glossy pamphlets about home health coaching. I also noticed Kayla had started asking me scripted questions while the Fitbit hummed. "Any dizzy spells? Any cheating on the plan? Did you take all your supplements?" She wasn't asking for me. She was collecting data points like stamps. That spring, at the Crocker Art Museum, I lost my balance in front of a bright Rothko and grabbed for a bench that wasn't there. The room inhaled with me. A docent asked if I needed water. Kayla said, "Her sodium is unstable if she cheats," loudly enough for strangers to glance at my waistline like it was a confession. She steered me toward the exit like I weighed nothing at all. The night before the hospital, I dreamed of eggs, sunny side up, salted with flair. I woke to the rattling cough of an empty stomach and the bright voice of the woman who had made herself my steward. "It's weigh-in day," she chirped, setting the scale on the tile. The numbers rolled, settled. She frowned. "You're plateauing. We need to get serious." She brought me a breakfast so Spartan it felt like a dare. 1/2 cup of plain yogurt with chia seeds, a half apple, 1 almond like a period to end a sentence. When I asked for toast, she smiled and tilted her head like she was trying to hear a better version of me. Later, at Poppy's piano recital at the Crest Theater downtown, right when a brave little boy in a bow tie was pounding out for Elise, my vision flared at the edges and then tunneled like I was being pulled through a straw. I remember the velvet seats and the red exit sign and the cheap perfume of a woman in the row ahead who smelled like oranges and nostalgia. I stood, or I thought I stood, and then the carpet came, and then Kayla's voice was next to my ear, stage whispered for the audience. "She skipped lunch. She sneaks. She's non-compliant." The usher called 911, and I tried to say no, to say I had a banana in my purse, to say anything that would let me get up with my dignity, but a banana is not a gurney. At Sutter's ER, the air felt refrigerated to a moral degree. A nurse with a sensible ponytail took my vitals, frowned, and slid an IV into my hand like forgiveness. Kayla leaned on the counter, unsnapping her blue binder. "I'm her caregiver," she announced, and that word wobbled in the sterile air. She produced papers with a physician's logo I recognized, UC Davis Health, printed out neatly, stapled square, signed by a Dr. N. Cheng, internal medicine. "We have a plan," she told the nurse, laying down my nutritional regimen like a trump card. "She lies about intake, so we control her portions. No salt. 800 calories, medically monitored." The ER doc arrived, a tall man with careful eyes and a badge that read, E. Harrington, M.D. He greeted me first, which I noticed because I notice who looks at you and who looks at your chaperone. He asked me questions with gentleness that felt like warmth in that cold place, when I'd last eaten, what I took for blood pressure, where the dizziness felt sharpest. He asked Kayla for the binder and examined it while a nurse navigated the portal on the screen. His eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly, the way a person narrows their eyes when they're adding up numbers that refuse to total. "The order in your binder is dated last month," he said to Kayla without accusation. "But the signature line for Dr. Cheng uses the old clinic address. That address changed in January." He turned a few pages. "And the font on this letterhead, it's not our standard." He looked at the nurse, who was frowning at the computer. "What do you see?" "Insurance portal shows a series of home health claims in the last 6 weeks," the nurse said, her mouth going a little flat. "Daily visits, nutrition monitoring, codes for severe noncompliance, and an authorization note from Capital Wellness LLC, caregiver Kayla C." Harrington looked up at Kayla, then at me. "Mrs. Foster," he said, still calm, "is Kayla your legal caregiver? Do you have a power of attorney on file?" "No," I said. My voice surprised me with its steadiness. "I have a son. I have a daughter-in-law. I have a friend named Beatrice who knows what real butter tastes like. I don't have a legal anything." Kayla laughed, light. "She forgets," she said. To the doctor, brighter, "I'm the only one who can manage her intake. She cheats constantly. If you don't enforce the plan, she will binge. She's been like this since Mark was a kid. I'm trying to save her life. You of all people should know what salt does to a woman her age." The doc's face didn't change much, but his eyes stepped back. He slid the binder toward him, tapped a finger on the forged letter, then on the claims visible on the nurse's screen. Without looking away, he pressed the gray button near the vitals monitor. "Security to triage 3, he said, "and page social work. Now." Kayla's smile didn't shift until the 2 security officers in black uniforms appeared with their professional politeness, and a social worker named Ivy arrived with a clipboard and a voice practiced at walking into rooms like bomb squads. The nurse looked at me with a kindness so firm it felt like someone had finally put their hand on the small of my back to guide me to safety. Kayla's grip tightened on the binder. "This is ridiculous," she said, the syllables unspooling like string. "Elaine wants me here. She asked me to manage her food. Tell them, Elaine." The room expanded around us. Beeping machines, the metallic scent of sanitizer, the murmur of someone crying in the next bay. I looked at the ceiling where a piece of paint bubbled like gum and thought about every small yes I'd said to keep peace in my house. I thought about Poppy's strawberry on my plate. I thought about my missing yellow bowl. Sometimes a woman spends years learning to speak, and then one day her voice arrives already formed. "I don't want this," I said, looking at Dr. Harrington, because he had looked at me first. "I never wanted this." Kayla turned to the social worker, suddenly soft again. "She's confused. It's hypoglycemia talking. She'll say anything to get sugar. She always does. I was warned about this in my training." "What training?" Ivy asked, mild as milk. She lifted the binder between 2 fingers like a forensic tech who doesn't want to contaminate evidence, because the licensing number on your pamphlet is for a florist in Elk Grove. Kayla blinked, fast. Her mouth parted for a breath that didn't come. "Mark wasn't there. He was up a pole somewhere in Rancho Cordova, wearing a hard hat and trusting that the world was well because his wife told him so." My heart beat hard enough to count. The security officer closest to Kayla said, in a voice meant for diffusing, "Ma'am, We're going to ask you to step outside while we talk to the patient and staff. Kayla clutched the binder to her chest. She's not safe without me. Dr. Harrington's smile was the kind that never reaches eyes. That's exactly what we're here to determine. They were careful with her, polite, professional, the way you are with people who might spin gold out of a complaint. They guided her to the hallway while Ivy sat beside me and asked questions that tasted like air. What do you eat? Who buys your groceries? Have you ever been stopped from eating? Have you ever felt punished for eating? Do you feel safe at home? I told her about the lock, about the child-proof lids on jars that never had lids before, about the way my hunger had been recast as a moral failure and how my son's love had been conscripted into an army I didn't recognize. I told her about the claims I hadn't seen but felt, the way money had started moving through my life without telling me where it was going. I told her about the binder and the letter and the joke. That wasn't a joke by the cake. Ivy wrote and nodded and wrote. She never forced a shape onto my sentences. She let them be jagged. And then she asked me the question that turned a corner I didn't know was there. Would you like help changing this? It was such a simple arrangement of words that it felt like a trick. Do you want help? I was 64, a widow, a woman who used to run a high school attendance office with a ledger and a stare. I was the person people went to when the printer jammed and the principal panicked. And yet it took until that moment, blood sugar climbing from the IV, hands warming under the thin blanket, for me to say, yes. Ivy squeezed my arm. Okay, she said. Then we're going to document, and we're going to separate you from that binder and anyone who thinks hunger is a leash. We're going to loop in Adult Protective Services. We're going to call your son, and you're going to eat something. In that moment, a nurse pushed a tray toward me with a cup of Jell-O that trembled like a small animal. I laughed, an unexpected bubbling thing, because the wobble felt like hope. Then the curtain swished, and Kayla's voice, sugar-poisoned and bright, slid back into the room as if on casters. "Elaine?" she called, as if she were soothing me, as if I were a child who liked to be tucked. "I told them you need me." The security officer stepped partly into her view. "Ma'am, we asked you to wait." "I'm family," she said, and in her mouth the words sounded expensive. Dr. Harrington reappeared with a printout he placed gently on the bedside table. Just a few lines, black on white, as banal as a grocery list. "Mrs. Foster," he said, keeping his eyes on me, "this is the CMS explanation of benefits we pulled from the portal with your permission. There are claims here for services you didn't receive. We're going to make some calls." He looked up finally at Kayla, and whatever softness his face knew was gone. "For now, step out. Now." Kayla's mouth pressed into a line you could measure. She turned her face to me, that bright influencer smile pasted back on like a bumper sticker over a dent. "You're making a scene, Elaine," she said gently, the way one might talk to a mutinous dog. "You won't like where this goes." I looked at the Jell-O. I lifted my spoon. It trembled in my hand, ringing faintly against the plastic like a tiny bell. I took a bite. The sweetness flooded my mouth like apology, and the woman who had spent months being told no felt what yes tasted like again. I chewed slowly, deliberately, and swallowed with my eyes on her. "I already do," I said. She stared for 1 second too long, miscalculating the shape of me. Then she pivoted on her neat sandals, the ones with the braided straps she always photographed against white rugs, and disappeared into the corridor where the security officer's radio crackled with the day's other small disasters. Ivy reached for my hand. Her fingers were cool and steady. "We'll need to talk to your son," she said. "Do you want to call him, or should we?" I thought of Mark up a pole, the sky too blue, the world too big. "I'll make the first apology," I said, and felt the weight of the words packed neatly into my chest, like something solid I could carry. My phone lay in the shallow drawer of my purse like a relic. I held it, the screen reflecting that ugly light back at me, and scrolled to his name. My thumb hovered. Before I could press, the curtain opened a sliver and a different voice slid in, low, familiar, the voice of a man who once fixed my garbage disposal on a Sunday and didn't charge me because he remembered the lemon bars I brought to the union picnic. "Elaine," he said, poking his head in with a look of concern he tried to keep casual. "What happened to you? I got a call through the grapevine that you were here." It was Beatrice's brother, Tony, who worked maintenance at the hospital and knew everyone by their coffee order. "Did you see my chart?" I asked before I could stop myself. He shrugged, lips pressed. "Not my department." He tipped his chin toward the hall. "But I saw who's pacing, and I saw the binder." He glanced to the nurse, to the doc, to Ivy, measuring the air. "You want me to go keep her busy?" I opened my mouth to say no, to say it wasn't necessary, to say the rules, and then I remembered the rules had never been mine, and the hallway carried Kayla's perfume like a headache. "Please," I said, "keep her talking." He smiled, grim. "I can talk," he said, and vanished into the corridor with the casual competence of a man who has waded through worse. Dr. Harrington pulled the curtain closed. "We're initiating a hold on any unusual changes to your medical record, he said. "Social work will coordinate with APS. For now, you'll eat, we'll stabilize you, and we'll get statements." His voice gentled a fraction. "And Mrs. Foster, Elaine, no one gets to shame you in this room." The overhead light hummed. The IV pump clicked, a metronome for my small return to myself. The Jell-O cup emptied in bright, trembling spoonfuls, and the room felt wider with each sugar swallow. Ivy began asking for names and dates, and my mind, sharpened by that tiny cup, started laying out a breadcrumb trail I could finally see. The child lock, the shredded receipts, the way the mailbox key had migrated to Kayla's keychain, the medical portal password that drifted into her phone, the pretty pamphlets with someone else's licensing number, the CVS pharmacist who had once frowned when Kayla insisted she could pick up my meds without me. The bank login suddenly altered to two-factor authentication routed to someone else's device. I saw it all at once, the way you see the picture in a magic eye when you stop trying too hard. "Okay," Ivy said, making neat notes that did not feel like diminishment. "We'll take it from here. Do you have anyone who can meet you at home when you're discharged? Someone you trust to be in the house with you?" Beatrice, faithful as cinnamon toast. "Yes," I said. "I have someone." "Good," Ivy said. She stood, and her chair made a small rubber squeal on the linoleum, a mundane soundtrack to a pivot point in a life. "We're going to help you change this, Elaine, but first, we're going to stop pretending it isn't happening." I nodded. It felt like learning to walk again, in a corridor where a woman with a floral logo on her lanyard was telling anyone who would listen that I needed her to save me from myself. It felt like eating the smallest dessert in the world, and tasting not sugar, but permission. It felt like realizing the lock on your pantry door is a metaphor so clumsy even you, hungry as you are, can't miss it. Outside, someone laughed, the wrong kind of laugh, bright, brittle, the kind that skitters across tile and finds you in your curtained bay. I knew that sound like a ringtone I never wanted. I put the empty cup on the tray, tidy, and folded my napkin over it like a lid. I took a breath, one of those deep ones the respiratory therapist once taught me after my husband died, where you fill the bottom of your lungs first and then the top, expanding like a balloon where the sadness lives. I picked up my phone again, thumb hovering over Mark's name, and right as I pressed call, the curtain snapped back an inch, and Tony's voice came in low and fast. "She's on the phone," he whispered, eyes sharp. "Not with your son, with somebody from an insurance office. She just said the word retroactive." "And she doesn't look scared, Elaine. She looks mad." Tony's whisper hung in the air like the hush right before lightning. Retroactive. Insurance. Mad. The three words stacked in my chest like bricks, heavy and strangely stabilizing. Kayla had two default settings, radiant and righteous. Righteous was what she brought to knife fights. I pressed Mark's name and put the phone to my ear, and the line clicked after 2 rings. "Ma?" he said, wind in the background, the low hum of a bucket truck engine beneath his voice. "You okay? I got a ping from the hospital on the app. What's going on?" "They've got me on fluids," I said, steady as a metronome because I needed him to hear competence, not chaos. "I fainted at Poppy's recital. They found things in my chart, claims, a binder Ivy thinks is forged. They called security on Kayla." He didn't speak for a beat, and in that half-second I felt the hinge of his world trying to decide which way to swing. "What?" he said finally, shorter, sharp. "Security? On Kayla. Why?" "Because someone filed home health visits in my name. Because somebody pretended to be more than they are," I said, and I could hear the old secretary in me surface, the one who had calmly told boys with fake notes from Coach that the signature looked like a rushed snake. "They're bringing in Adult Protective Services. Don't get mad at anyone until you see what they have." "My God," he muttered, not to me, but to the blue Sacramento sky, to the humming lines he spent his life keeping honest. "I'm on Florin. I can be there in 20. A rustle, the sound of a radio, a man telling another man he needs to step away. "Ma, are you safe?" "Yes," I said. "Ivy's here, Dr. Harrington, and Tony is doing crowd control." Another pause, softer, and then he said the small, private nickname he hadn't used since he left for his apprenticeship at 20. "Okay, Mama, stay put." I disconnected and let the phone sit in my lap, warm and useful. Ivy was already moving, efficient and invisible in the way women in hospitals make miracles look like schedules. She came back with a form on a clipboard. "We're going to put a communication block on your chart," she said. "No one outside your authorized list gets updates. You want your son and Beatrice on that?" "Yes," I said. "And my primary, Dr. McAllister." "Good," she said, writing. "We've also flagged your insurer's special investigations unit. They're already on the line with our billing." She looked toward the curtain, where Kayla's laugh drifted like spray from a soda fountain. Aggressive, sticky. "We'll ask security to keep her out." The curtain moved, and Dr. Harrington slipped back in with that same controlled expression that made me think of high beams on fog. "Mrs. Foster," he said, "we have to ask you a few more questions. Your IV looks good. Labs are improving. Can you consent for us to release your billing records to SIU and APS?" "Yes," I said. The nurse checked my line. The paper bracelet against my skin felt briefly like a talisman. "Yes," I said again, not because he hadn't heard me, but because I needed to hear me. By the time Mark arrived, hard hat in hand, cheeks sunburned where his sunglasses didn't reach, Kayla had escalated from persuasive to performative. She was in the corridor near triage with her phone held low, near her hip, filming on the sly in that way influencers think makes them invisible. She was monologuing to her audience of one, herself. "My toxic mother-in-law is trying to sabotage her own health," she said. "These doctors don't understand metabolic flexibility. If you give old people what they want, they die." The security officer saw Mark before he saw Kayla. "Sir," he said, stepping forward with a hand up, calm traffic cop posture. "Are you family for Mrs. Foster?" "I'm her son," Mark said, flashing his badge, his real one, the one with the Smoothie logo, and a picture of him that always made him look both younger and more tired than he was. "What the hell happened?" The officer glanced to Ivy, who was there before I registered she'd moved, and she took Mark's elbow like she had every right. "Let's talk inside," she said. "Your mom asked for you and Beatrice on her authorization list." She didn't look at Kayla. That was a power I envied. How to starve someone with denial of eye contact. "Babe!" Kayla chirped, the phone dipping as she recognized a new audience. "They've been so dramatic. I told them you want me here. Tell them." Mark's eyes cut toward her, a habit he'd developed to check for approval, and then away. "Just give me a second," he said. Not unkind, exactly, but not hers. She blinked like someone had flicked her. Inside, I watched him take in the Jell-O cup, the IV pump, the binder quarantined on the counter under a clear plastic bag like evidence in a crime show. Dr. Harrington introduced himself, shook Mark's hand, handed him a copy of the forged care plan, and pointed gently to the inconsistencies as if he were a teacher giving a pop quiz to a bright student who'd missed the point of a paragraph. Ivy outlined APS. Tony, bless him, leaned on the curtain with the casual authority of a man who knows where the breaker boxes are and how to shut the lights off without anyone noticing. Mark turned pages. His mouth twitched when he got to the florist license number masquerading as a credential. "This is not real," he said, as if naming it would shrink it. "Right?" "It's not," Dr. Harrington said, "and neither are the claims. The insurer's SIU is asking the provider to send time-stamped visit logs." He glanced at me. "They won't match." Kayla tried the curtain again. "We need to align on messaging," she called brightly, like we were a brand campaign. "Mark, can you tell them I'm the voice of reason here?" He closed the binder with a thud that felt final. When he opened the curtain, he didn't step out. He didn't reach for her. He just held onto the edge of the blue fabric like it was a rope in a storm. "Kay," he said, his voice different, lower. "Where did you get this letterhead?" She gave him that look she uses on cameras, sunny, patient, the expression of a woman correcting a man she loves in public. "From Dr. Cheng. It's a template. We've talked about this." He blinked slowly, the way he does when a breaker trips, and he's already in the bucket. "We haven't," he said. "And the address is wrong. The number is wrong. The font—" "For God's sake," she snapped, the sunshine cracking like a cheap veneer. "You don't understand. Your mother has no self-control. If I let her, she'd drown herself in butter. Do you want Poppy to watch her grandmother die of a stroke? Because I'm the only one doing anything to prevent it." "You billed my mother's insurance," he said evenly, not biting, not arguing the merits of butter, focusing like the electrician. He is on the one hot wire in the room. "You billed using some company you started out of my house, did you?" He didn't ask how. He asked, did. She softened, flipped a switch, returned to the version of herself that people like to like. "I have a business," she said. "It's a service. You said yourself your mom's old routine wasn't working. Everyone in my group does it. It's proactive care." "I never authorized you to file anything for my mom," he said. "She didn't either." "You don't have to authorize care that saves a life," she said. And there it was, the authoritarian under the angel's dress, the iron bar in the velvet sleeve. Ivy stepped forward. "Ms. C," she said calmly, "for now, please wait in the family room. We'll speak with you when we have APS present." Kayla stared at her, at me, then at Mark, looking for the chink in the armor. "I'll wait," she said sweetly, and then to me, the syrup turned to vinegar, low and poisonous. "You're welcome for the weight loss." When the curtain closed again, I exhaled so hard my ribs felt like flags. Mark sank into the chair, elbows on knees, big hands covering his face. I could see the war inside him, a dozen small concessions rolling backward like beads, gathering speed into something that can knock a man down. I reached across the blanket and put my hand on his forearm. "This isn't your fault," I said. "Our house is designed for me to forgive. I should have noticed the architecture sooner." He laughed, one humorless puff. "I'll call Beatrice," he said. "We're changing the locks tonight." We did more than that. That afternoon, while APS took my statement and SIU screenshotted Kayla's day in the life of a wellness coach videos that painted her at the Midtown Farmers Market at 10 a.m. on days she had billed my home at 10:15, Ivy had me change passwords for everything: the patient portal, the pharmacy, the bank. We placed a fraud alert on my credit, set up a credit freeze with Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. The pharmacist at the CVS on Freeport flagged my profile with a note: "Do not release to third party without patient present." Dr. McAllister's office updated my chart to No one but patient and son. The hospital printed a letter for me to hand to anyone who needed to see that boundary made official. It felt like laying sandbags before a storm. It felt like work that might save a little town. By evening, Beatrice arrived in a red cardigan with Tupperware full of chicken and rice that smelled like a mother who doesn't judge. She hugged me with a softness that didn't hurt my IV, then looked at the binder in the evidence bag with the same cool loathing she reserves for store-bought pie crusts. "We're going to taste food again," she said simply. "At my place if we need to. The password to my Netflix is still the dog's name. I can't change it. I'm too old." We laughed, and the laugh tasted like oxygen. Mark drove me home after discharge, following the ambulance with my paperwork like it was a guidebook for a country we hadn't meant to visit. Security had escorted Kayla off the floor when she tried to argue with the social worker about undermining her authority. She texted Mark 63 messages between the hospital and our house. They came in clots. At first, "We need to present a united front. This is optics." Then, "I can't believe you're letting them do this to me." Then the sticky sweet, "Baby, I love you. You know your mom lies." And finally the cold, "If you embarrass me, I will take Poppy where you can't find her." He showed me the last one in the kitchen as the locksmith, a college kid with a nose ring and a serious face, installed a deadbolt that clicked with lovely finality. Mark's face was ashen. "She doesn't mean it," he said, pleading with himself. "She's mad." "She says what she means," I said, a simple diagnosis. Then, because someone had to move the world forward, "For tonight, you and Poppy stay here. Beatrice sleeps in the guest room. Tomorrow, we see a lawyer." We did. The next morning, we sat in a glass box on the 14th floor of a building on Capitol Mall, with a view of the Tower Bridge shining like a toy in the sun. The lawyer was a woman with hair the color of paper clips and a voice like a neat desk. She took one look at the text about Poppy and filed a request for a temporary restraining order the same day with the Gordon D. Shaber Courthouse. She advised Mark to file for a protective order that included Poppy and to consider separation, not because she wanted to break a family, but because sometimes you have to take the battery out of a clock to stop hearing it tick wrong. We handed her copies of the forged binder, the explanation of benefits with Capital Wellness LLC, screenshots of Kayla posting from Old Soul Coffee on 40th while billing my home visit. We wrote statements. I answered questions. Ivy faxed what needed faxing. SIU emailed what needed emailing. The lawyer nodded. "Elder abuse," she said flatly. "Insurance fraud, identity theft. You have a good paper trail. We'll call the DA's office." That afternoon, we met a detective in a blue suit with shoulders like a barn door. He specialized in financial crimes. He had the patience of a gardener. He took the binder delicately, like it was poisonous. "You mind if I take this?" he asked. "We'll get it back to you. We'll need to talk to Dr. Cheng about his letterhead, and to your pharmacist, and to the insurer about SIU. He looked at me kindly. "You did good calling it." "I didn't," I said. "The doctor did." "Then he did," the detective said. "And you kept saying yes to the right things today. That's not nothing." Kayla did not go quietly. She posted a video that night, sitting in her car in a dim parking garage that looked suspiciously like the one at Doak O by the Golden One Center. She cried perfectly, the way a person cries when they've practiced. "Today, a hospital attacked me for trying to save someone I love," she said, voice wobbling on cue. "They called security on a caregiver. They called APS on a daughter, essentially. This is what happens when big food and big pharma—" She stopped, tilted her head. "Anyway, send prayers." Her followers responded with heart emojis and warnings about toxins. One comment, from a woman named Jen Cleanses, said, "Sue the hospital." Another said, "Old people are stubborn." Beatrice sent the video to me with the word garbage and a string of the little trash can emoji. SIU, when we forwarded it, sent back a single sentence. "Thank you. This helps establish billing time conflicts. Sometimes the universe hands you the rope. There are moments in revenge that feel like movie scenes, even if real life is slower. 2 weeks later, one unfolded at the Midtown Farmers Market in the stretch by 20th and K. The SIU had asked me if I'd be comfortable walking the length of the market with a case manager while they checked Kayla's real-time location against the provider portal where she had scheduled another home visit for me. I said yes, because I was hungry to say yes to something that wasn't another woman's diet. The case manager was a compact woman with a tablet and sneakers and the smile of someone who likes dogs. She stayed 3 paces behind me while I strolled past peaches and radishes and the man who plays guitar by the kettle corn stand. Kayla was there in a white jumpsuit that didn't allow pockets and a straw hat that made her look like the mayor of a city where only juice matters. She was filming herself with a ring light clipped to her phone, holding a bunch of chard like a bouquet. On the case manager's tablet, the provider portal ticked to 10:15 a.m. Home visit, Elaine F. Vitals, compliance check. The tablet captured a screenshot, timestamp gnawing its proof into the pixels. Across K Street, Kayla told her followers about the bloat you're not addressing. On the far end of the sidewalk, the detective leaned against a lamppost and didn't wave to me, professionally. 3 days after that, I sat in a bland room at the police station with gray carpet and a clock that ticked too loudly. The detective slid a folder across to me and asked me to confirm that this was my driver's license in the copy with a note. For file, consent to caregiver. It was my face, but not my signature. Where the E in Elaine should have been curved, it was hooked, a forgery that didn't know my hand. We think she submitted this to support the claims, he said. We have the IP address. It tracks to your Wi-Fi in March. Do you remember letting her in your office? I did. 3 months ago, I'd left my desk to get the mail. When I came back, Kayla was sitting in my chair, my laptop open, her fingers moving fast. Password update, she had said, smiling. Security patch. When the detective looked up, something like pity warmed his eyes. This is the part where you tell yourself you should have been smarter, he said, not unkind. Don't. People who take advantage count on you to do that. Save your energy for court. Court came in August, at the courthouse on 9th, the one that always smells like dust and old coffee and the faint tang of loss. The DA's office filed charges: insurance fraud, identity theft, false personation, and elder abuse. Kayla arrived in a beige pantsuit and a smirk so close to her old smile it hurt to look at it. Her lawyer was a man who said misunderstanding too many times in one sentence. She pled not guilty. The judge denied the motion to dismiss. The preliminary hearing took 2 days. I brought a cardigan and a pen. I sat under the buzzing lights and listened to Dr. Cheng say calmly that he had not signed the binder. To the SIU rep, explain their timestamp matrix. To the CVS pharmacist, describe a woman who insisted, "We don't need to bother Elaine," and was told, "That's not how it works." To Beatrice when she said, in her no-nonsense bakery voice, that she had watched me measure chicken and cry. And then to my son, who stood in his one good suit and told the court the truth about a text that threatened to take his little girl away in order to win an argument about optics. When it was my turn, I took the stand and placed my hand on a Bible that smelled faintly of lemon cleaner. The DA asked questions I had rehearsed answers to in the shower, in the car, stirring soup. "How did this affect you?" she asked, the one question that made my tongue stick. "She made hunger a moral failure, Baal," I said slowly, each word a step on a bridge that honestly might have collapsed if I'd tried to run. "She made my body her billboard. She took my pantry and my passwords and my doctor's name, and she wore them like clothing to sell something. And she taught my granddaughter that a woman eating cake at her own table is a sin. She took my choices and called it love." Kayla watched me with a face full of contempt, the kind I recognized because I had cooked it for myself in smaller portions. The judge watched without much expression, the way judges practice. The jurors, teachers and bus drivers, and a man with a beard who looked like he knows about old records watched me like I was saying something they could tuck into their pockets. After my testimony, Kayla's lawyer asked me if I had ever cheated on the plan. The courtroom rustled. "Every day since the plan was imposed," I said, smiling at him like an old ally. "I ate food when I was hungry. I salt my eggs. I am 64, and I will eat cake at my granddaughter's birthday." In the second row, someone snorted and the judge threatened contempt, and we all sobered up like kids. At the end of the trial, when the DA explained the legal definitions and the defense said the word miscommunication as if it were an invisibility cloak, the jury stepped out and back in like a tide. Guilty on insurance fraud, guilty on identity theft, guilty on false personation. On elder abuse, they went out again, came back, said guilty, and the room made a small noise, as if everyone had exhaled at the same time. Sentencing happened a month later. The court ordered restitution, the money the insurer had already clawed back, plus fines, to be paid from any assets belonging to Capital Wellness LLC, which turned out to be an Etsy shop worth of yoga mats and a backlog of affiliate checks that had stopped arriving when two big brands quietly severed ties after legal issues. She received 2 years probation, 400 hours of community service not allowed to be wellness-related, a ban on acting as a caregiver without licensure, and a no-contact order that included me, my bank account, my doctor's office, my pharmacy, and, at my request, my pantry. It seemed ridiculous to include a kitchen in a legal document until I remembered the lock. Mark filed for legal separation a week later. He didn't do it to punish her. He did it because staying felt like handing his daughter a script where love excuses control. The family court judge granted him temporary physical custody of Poppy with supervised visitation for Kayla. On their first supervised visit at a playground in Land Park, Kayla tried to give Poppy a T-shirt that said, "Sugar is a lie." The court monitor gently took it and put it in her tote. There are small mercies in bureaucracy. After the sentencing, I went home to the house on Brentwood Drive that remembered me. Beatrice had left a lasagna in my fridge and a post-it on my counter that read, "Welcome home. Salt is in the place God intended." Mark had taken down the Elaine's plan chart and replaced it with Poppy's drawing of our hydrangeas, 8 rays around a confident smile, color outside the lines on purpose. In the pantry, a new lock gleamed silver on the floor, warped and broken. The locksmith had handed me the old one with a grin. "Want a trophy?" he'd asked. I'd said yes. I put it on the shelf where the honey goes, a reminder that things meant for babies don't belong on a grandmother's food. A week later, a box arrived on my porch from a return address in Elk Grove, Magnolia Blooms. Inside, wrapped in old newspaper, was my yellow mixing bowl. No note. Just the bowl with the tiny chip near the rim, the one I'd made the year Mark was 11, and insisted on stirring the batter too vigorously. I stood in my kitchen and held it like a person. Then I set it on the counter and whisked eggs in it like a prayer. On a Sunday, when the Delta breeze slipped into the city with its soft promise, we held a small dinner in my backyard. I made roast chicken with lemon and thyme and butter, and I salted it with the curve of my hand. Beatrice brought green beans and almonds. Tony came with a 6-pack and a toolbox because some men don't know how else to show love, and that is fine with me. Poppy set the table and placed a strawberry on my plate, like the memory of a bruise made into a badge. Mark asked me if I'd like paper or glass for my tea. "Glass," I said, and he laughed because he had offered a choice and because I had taken it. We ate. We talked about nothing special. The sun slid down behind the neighbor's birch. Across the fence, someone's radio played an old song from the 70s, and I swayed in my chair. When the plates were smeared clean with grease and herbs, and Poppy had declared the chicken better than pizza, high praise, Mark stacked the dishes and turned to me. "Ma," he said, hand on the back of my chair, "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." "I didn't either," I said. "Until I did, that's enough." We cleared the table. We cut a cake, a real one, dense and honest, with buttercream that left sweet smudges on our fingers. When I lifted my fork, Poppy laughed and said, "Nana's in good trouble." And we all laughed with her, not because anyone was in trouble, but because a 7-year-old had seized the right word for joy. Later, after Beatrice had gone home with Tupperware and Tony had fixed a cabinet hinge that didn't need fixing, after Poppy fell asleep on the couch with a crust of frosting dried near her lip, after Mark and I sat on the back steps and watched a moth circle the porch light like a cliché, I forgave for being beautiful. I went inside and washed my yellow bowl by hand. I dried it with a cotton towel and placed it in the second cabinet from the sink where it belongs. I closed the door and listened to the sound it made, the straightforward click of wood on wood, nothing sneaky in it. In the fall, after the leaves in Tahoe-sized piles made their once-a-year appearance on our street, and after I bought Poppy a jacket with a sparkly zipper that made her feel fast, I went to the courthouse again, not for Kayla this time, but for a hearing in a different room with a different judge on a different floor. The case caption was mine versus Capital Wellness LLC. The lawyer believed we had a good shot at clawing back some of what Kayla had siphoned in my name. We won a judgment that will pay out over years in small checks that will never equal what hunger took. It didn't matter. Revenge that is only money tastes like substitute sugar anyway. The real prize is a pantry without a lock, a phone without a watcher, a doctor who looked me in the eye, a yes I get to say because it's mine. Ivy emailed me a month later to ask if I'd consider speaking at a hospital training on recognizing non-obvious elder abuse. "You're credible," she wrote. "You're clear. You're not a cliché, and that helps." I stood in a conference room with fluorescent lights and a carafe of coffee and told a half-dozen young clinicians about the signs that hide under the word care. I told them about locks on pantries and words like non-compliant, about binders with the wrong font, and licensing numbers that lead to tulips instead of degrees. I told them that betrayal rarely announces itself. It tap dances like good intentions on a white rug. They took notes. They nodded. When I finished, a nurse with tired eyes asked me how to say the hard sentence if her patient didn't have a son, a Beatrice, a Tony. "Would you like help changing this?" I said, and she wrote the sentence down like a prescription. Sometimes I still hear Kayla's voice in my head, the sugar poison, the moralizing cadence. Sometimes when I salt a pot of pasta, I can almost feel her stare, and my hand trembles with old muscle memory. When it does, I lift my hand higher and watch the grains fall like a good snowfall, steady, sufficient. I'm not afraid of flavor anymore. A note arrived in December, this time for real, from the DA's office. Restitution processed. It included a check with an amount more precise than meaningful. I endorsed it and set it aside to deposit later. Then I took my granddaughter to Tower Cafe on Broadway, and we split the huevos rancheros I used to eat on Thursdays with Beatrice because you can honor an old ritual from a new place in your life. Poppy spooned pico de gallo into her mouth and said, "Spicy," with delight, and I said, "That's how you know you're awake." On the walk back to the car, we passed a florist with a sandwich board that read, "Magnolia Special," and I laughed out loud, a raw, delighted bark that made Poppy look up, startled, then giggle, because laughing is contagious, and luck is too, if you let it be. I bought a single white magnolia for the kitchen table, not because I wanted to reclaim the word, but because the bloom looked like a clean page. At night, when the house settles and the old heater makes its trustworthy clicks, I sometimes pad into the kitchen in my socks and pour a glass of water. The moon lays itself across the island like a tablecloth. I open the pantry just to hear the sound. I take down my yellow bowl and cup it in my hands and think about the weight of small, quiet objects, the way they sit in a house, like vows. The last time I saw Kayla was at the park, a month after sentencing, across the grass by the softball field. She was on a bench with the court monitor, watching Poppy climb the low rock wall like a cat in pink sneakers. She wore a different smile, thinner around the edges, like a person who has learned that the room doesn't turn simply because she does. Our eyes met for a second across the distance, and for once, she looked away first. I didn't wave. I didn't gloat. I just watched my granddaughter jump down, knees, bending at impact, body taking the shock, recovering, laughing. Mark clapped from the bench beside me and handed me a napkin, because I had icing on my finger from the cookies we'd brought. I licked the icing off instead, slow, deliberate, and folded the napkin neatly on my knee. I tell this now because a woman can be starved politely in her own kitchen while everyone thinks they're watching a miracle, and because the word care is not proof, only behavior is. If you hear a lock click in your life dressed up as love, consider that it might be a leash. Hunger has a sound. It took me too long to recognize it. Now, when my pantry closes, I listen for silence. The end.